Dive into our in-depth Assassin's Creed Shadows review. We explore the dual protagonists, 𝐦𝐤𝐤 and 𝐦𝐨𝐬, dissecting their unique combat and stealth styles in feudal Japan's breathtaking setting. Discover hidden secrets, uncover gameplay nuances, and judge whether this long-awaited title delivers on its promises. From stunning visuals to a gripping storyline, we leave no stone unturned. Is it a must-have or a missed opportunity? Watch now to find out and decide if this historical adventure lives up to the hype. Don't miss our expert analysis and gameplay insights. Assassin's Creed Shadows takes its particular brand of historical fiction to Sengoku, Japan, which is a period of strife and war that extended over 150 years and completely reshaped the country both politically and socio-economically. The real-life scale of battles, machinations, horse trading, and backstabbing that took place during this period put fictional Game of Thrones to shame, which means it's a very fertile ground for historical narratives and thus incredibly popular with writers of books, manga, anime, movies, and TV series. Ubisoft has finally turned its gaze east and delivered its new open-world formula for Assassin's Creed Japan that fans were so eagerly anticipating after successful ventures into Egypt, Greece, and the Nordic invasion of Britain. With a setting as rich and dramatic as Sengoku that saw the incredibly convenient rise of the shinobi for an assassin game, and with so much material to draw inspiration from, it seemed like the story aspect would be an easy slam dunk for the developers. Unfortunately though, this is not the case. While Assassin's Creed Shadows is an easy 10 out of 10 in terms of setting and gives developers the upper hand for an amazing story, the historical events you are embroiled with are very, very complex, and the avalanche of names, clans, and titles will probably be a bit disconcerting for most non-Japanese players. I'm very familiar with the time period and its personalities, so I didn't have trouble following the story, but due to the absence of an in-game codex about characters and timelines, I fear a lot of what happens will seem disjointed to the average gamer. If you want to understand a bit more about this particular period, you can check our video on the Battle of Sekigahara or the lore page on the Neo Wiki, as it gives some context to the setting that may help you keep up with who is who. But it's not just the complexity of the time that makes the story unsuccessful, but rather two major creative choices from Ubisoft that compound other smaller challenges. The first issue is that, for reasons unknown and that I can still not wrap my head around, this specific Assassin's Creed does not feature a single fictional protagonist, but instead introduces two, one fictional and one very loosely based on a minor historical figure. In Assassin's Creed Shadows, you will have to play as two distinct characters with their own set of skills, motivations, and opinions. From this very concept, the storytelling begins on the back foot, as it takes extreme nuance to make you the player fully identify and immerse into two completely different points of view. And this kind of perspective swapping usually doesn't deliver, and typically only sometimes works for more linear action-adventure games that can give you chapters, which have clear cuts between your protagonists. In this game, you begin the story as one character who you play briefly, then jump to the next one for quite a lot of time, then juggle back and forth between them to progress the main quest and explore the many side quests and activities that are reserved for one character or the other in the open world. This is both a gameplay and story issue, as it creates disassociation and frequently pulls you out of what has been a huge effort to make an immersive world. The second issue is the choice of making 𝐦𝐨𝐬, a historically factual may-have-been samurai from maybe Mozambique, the featured male protagonist of the game. The choice was puzzling to many, so Ubisoft themselves put out a post directed at offended Japanese gamers acknowledging that the historical status of this person is disputed, and highlighted that they are trying to create immersive historical fiction, and this representation is simply creative license. I'll quote it for clarity. While we strive for authenticity in everything that we do, Assassin's Creed games are works of fiction inspired by real historical events and figures. From its inception, the series has taken creative license and incorporated fantasy elements to craft engaging and immersive experiences. The representation of 𝐦𝐨𝐬 in our game is an illustration of this. His unique and mysterious life made him an ideal candidate to tell an Assassin's Creed story with the setting of feudal Japan as a backdrop. While Yasuke is depicted as a samurai in Assassin's Creed Shadows, we acknowledge that this is a matter of debate and discussion. This means that, for whatever reason, Ubisoft felt that their game set in Japan didn't need a Japanese male lead, and that it was better to tell the Assassin's Creed story from an African's adventure in Japan, with Japan itself as a backdrop. Though this was definitely not what I was expecting, as I wanted to experience a true samurai tale like Ghost of Tsushima, rising through the ranks and build a clan as a samurai, it is in the end a creative choice. This is historical fiction, a fabrication based on history, and its purpose is entertainment, so I just rolled with it to see what Ubisoft did with this concept. What I found was that the Yasuke protagonists don't really deliver much of an Assassin's Creed story, and what it does present doesn't work, and it seems to not work very specifically because of choices made regarding the two protagonists. On one hand, you have 𝐦𝐨𝐤𝐤𝐤. Her journey and motivations are plausible, and to me she feels like the real protagonist of the game, and the one really telling the Assassin's Creed story, as she's an eager shinobi that sneaks around like an assassin. But more importantly, her character grows and develops as you play. Compelling storytelling is almost always due to compelling character development. And while Naoi has a clear motivation and experiences that lead to changes in her thinking and actions, Yasuke simply never changes or grows throughout the entire game. You meet Servant Yasuke as an honorable, charming, strong warrior. You then fast forward a bit to Samurai Yasuke, who is an honorable, charming, strong warrior. Nothing changes at all, and the actual journey from servant to samurai is fast-forwarded, lacks depth, challenge or world building, and ultimately presents you with what feels like a Japanese person wearing a Yasuke costume. And I say this largely because besides children, the people Yasuke meets in his travels barely ever acknowledge he is a foreigner. They never react strangely or interested, and they interact with him as though he isn't any different than any other lord. People bow to him like if he's the shogun or daimyo, the ladies can't have enough of him, and the tiny locals have no chance against his physical prowess, including the most experienced and hardened of generals, warriors, and shinobis of the time period that have been training and waging war their entire lives. The result is that I generally felt incredibly out of place playing as Yasuke. To top it all off, Yasuke's African heritage is never even explored, and ignored completely to be replaced with an uncanny capacity to camouflage as a knowledgeable veteran Japanese samurai, which is a disservice to the historical Yasuke, the unrealized Japanese male lead that could have been, the game and series itself that prides on depth of research and immersion, and you the player. If, besides physical appearance, it is almost impossible to see Yasuke as anything other than Japanese, it really begs the question, why wasn't this protagonist Japanese? We don't find out, and the background glimpses of his story are a reductive attempt to retrofit movitation near the end of the game. These strange creative choices are exacerbated by a story hampered by the open-world gameplay that really affects the pacing and tempo. Once you are past the painfully slow start of the game and free in the open world, your objectives do not flow from one to the next, and the main story of the game is lost between bitsy side objectives and not even marked as a main story. So you find yourself constantly checking objectives to pick one target, only to find you must do 4 independent small side quests to unlock it. Most of these quests have none or very short dialogues or cutscenes, and the actual confrontation with the big bad guys is almost always disappointingly anticlimactic. The overarching and modern-day story part of Assassin's Creed is not really expanded, and rather monotonously crammed into some animus anomalies that made me roll my eyes with their Bond villain feel. Again, all of this extremely disappointing, given that it's so clear and obvious that so much research and love has gone into the crafting of this world and game. That developer passion towards the period should not be understated or lost on the fact that their narrative and pacing didn't come together, as it's still a passable story with an amazing setting and an incredibly rich culture as background, which is probably all that can be asked for given the series' past entries. And of course, there will be the voice about how people are not playing AC for the story, and I hear you on that. I have been playing AC since the very first one, which I 100% because I just had to get all those flags, and I have also completed the relaunched style games like Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla, including all DLCs and expansions. So I know what to expect in terms of story, and unfortunately this installment fell short for me, and I'm unsure if the planned DLC can actually change much of this. I hope some of it will go towards yokai and the supernatural, as the other games have done, which is probably my favorite part of any of the games. Elysium and Valhalla were amazing locations to discover and play in. AC Shadows gameplay impressions? Assassin's Creed Shadows follows the open-world gameplay formula that took off with Origins and has been carefully refined and optimized with each installment. It offers a massive open-world playground packed with activities, multiple progression paths, outstanding vistas, and even cultural deep dives to help immerse you into the history of the land. In this sense, the gameplay is open-world Assassin's Creed at its very best. Japan feels massive and the world has depth. It feels populated. There are so many unique and interesting things to do. I was thrilled when the world opened up and I could finally explore all of these amazing locales and discover their history, culture, and the smaller stories told within. The dual protagonist gameplay. Unfortunately, the double protagonist approach means that your stealth and warrior gameplay are divided into two characters, so you have to swap back and forth between them and adapt to the playstyle of each. There's almost no stealth or parkour with Yasuke, who can wield large weapons, bows, and medieval rifles. And there's no strength with Naoe, who can sneak about, but will not have access to samurai activities like learning katas, participating in mounted archery, or moving large blocks to explore ancient tombs. Each character has its own skill tree, equipment, quests, and objectives, which feels a bit like these two people together make what would normally be one protagonist, think Jin Sakai. I generally disliked playing as Yasuke from a gameplay perspective, as I favor stealth in AC games, so I tried to pick Nao as much as I could. Even with just half a character, I still feel like the gameplay delivers the experience we were all wanting, and exploration felt rewarding and interesting, with small but meaningful side quests and real variety of objectives and approaches. Where Ghost of Tsushima delivered in story and combat, but didn't quite deliver with exploration activities, Assassin's Creed Shadows seems to do the exact opposite with a much better approach to discovery, activities, and stealth. The best stealth gameplay available. I feel the main appeal of the Assassin's Creed gameplay is its stealth mechanics, and the addition to new difficulty nuance to stealth is incredibly welcome. You can tune it up to expert for a really challenging sneaking experience, or put it on easy and cruise, both of them without affecting your actual combat experience. I am generally a stealth player as I like the shinobi style of play, and found it incredibly rewarding and fun. To the point sometimes I would raid random places for loot just because I knew it was nighttime, and it would go better as the shadows embraced me. Enemies can detect you based on sound, and the sound you make while you walk will change if you're on grass or snow, or if you open a door without crouching, or if you're not going prone, etc. The stealth implementation in this game is so much fun, I honestly can't think of a game that has done it better. Or in a more detailed manner, this is a slam dunk for Ubisoft. Refined, flashy combat and samurai power fantasy. For those looking for combat focus, the game also has accessibility options that give you chained combos at the press of a button. But in general, it's still all about deflect and parry. Naoe uses a katana, a tanto, small dagger-style sword, a kusarigama, and shinobi tools, with effects like bleed, poison, and daze. Yasuke uses a long katana, a naginata polearm, a kanabo war club, a bow, and a tipo firearm. Each of these have their own skill trees, which you grow through by doing activities as either character and applying the points you have spent. Besides the skill trees for each character and weapon or style, there is some mild build crafting in the form of gear bonuses, swappable engravings, gear quality, and gear upgrades. Enemies can be dazed, poisoned, and afflicted by several effects, but it's all kept pretty lean when comparing it to the detailed gear options of Odyssey. And it's probably easy to ignore if you aren't playing on hard, but the variety itself is there, and is likely somewhat above Valhalla, including tips on where to find what engraving, so you can target the ones you want right away. In general, the combat has solid conceptualization with interesting movesets and effects. Some of the active skills trigger fancy blood splash effects on black and white ink-like visuals, which feel like a bit of a homage to the Japanese style of art that has inspired so much media. Despite any preferences that I have for stealth combat, 𝐤𝐨𝐬𝐤's samurai performance delivers a quite compelling, fluid, and engaging samurai power fantasy. I think most people that want to engage fully with the combat will thoroughly enjoy his head-on approach and stylish moves that are supported by ranged attacks with bow and teppo that feel quite good and even have haptic feedback. You should not go in expecting cinematic Ghost of Tsushima showdowns or Team Ninja's Rise of the Ronin combat, but this is probably some of the best combat the series has delivered, and it does so with flair. Out of combat exploration, activities, and allies. Outside of combat, the gameplay loop is quite diverse and has an excellent mix of practicing your form, relaxing, collecting, and sneaking. The game gives you a hideout as a base of operations, which acts as the settlement did in Valhalla, but with much more flexibility and options for a lot more cosmetic customization. You will also meet and gather allies for your hideout league, and they will join you in combat if you slot them. These allies are interesting but often strange-fitting, with one particular one wearing such weird clothing and spouting such silly dialogue that he reminded me of a comedian in a Japanese bangumi I used to watch. In general, I didn't care much for these side stories. Many of the rewards you find on the landscape or receive from quests are cosmetics for your hideout, which can be quite fun to deck out as you can decide where buildings will go and connect them for a smooth transition between pavilions. From there, you will set off to the many provinces and uncover more and more content as you go. With a board full of objectives and investigation quests, extra weekly quests available from the Animus, and seasonal repeatable quests available from your 𝐥𝐸𝐤𝐞, there is an amazing amount of exploration to do. Uncovering the whole map can be, of course, very daunting, and the Ubisoft team seems to have taken to heart the many criticisms levied their way after their misguided diss at Elden Ring. The result is that guided mode is now not recommended and disables some trophies. The UI is very slimmed down and much more immersive when traversing, and the game gives you clues about where to find people and things, but you have to use scouts and your own discovery to actually locate them. There's also no more follow road, which for me is a negative, as I really liked riding around looking at the landscapes of the previous game. Regardless, the core of exploration will be to either select a quest and use your season-limited scouts to find the objective, or follow the clues yourself and inspect the locations visually with focus mode as you walk around to find what you want. 𝐤𝐸 is also the only one with eagle vision, so your main exploration will be done with her, as she can see through walls and mark distant treasure that way. I really enjoyed navigating the hills and valleys of Japan and discovering towns and temples, collecting lost pages, meditating to ancient rhythm, finding unique and valuable works of art or tea sets, and filling up my inventory with ever more fanciful helms and armor for an endless loop of beautiful fashion designs. I felt like there was discovery at every corner, and the world came to life with the many NPC villagers, bandits, samurai, and monks roaming about, complete with small flavor dialogues that you could listen into to get clues for where to head to next. All in all, gameplay offers exactly what I wanted in terms of content, depth, and breadth, with the minor annoyance of having to swap between characters for some objectives and missing out on the samurai or shinobi side the rest of the time. AC Shadow's design, visual, audio, and performance. The design of Assassin's Creed Shadows is, like its predecessors, well-researched and beautiful. While this is obviously not the real Japan, and there could be many nitpicks about rice paddies, forests, temple costumes, location sizes, and distances, it is still without a doubt the most beautiful realization of a romanticized medieval Japan I have ever played. With 4 distinct seasons that affect not only gameplay mechanics, but entire flora, fauna, and villager behaviors. This is the closest a game gets to what it is like to visit these places in real life. There were some weird or odd choices and some shortcuts or gamey elements, and I was particularly heartbroken to visit the Daibutsukan in Nara and find the game does not show the glorious Buddha statue enshrined there. But overall, the world kept calling me back to explore, ride around, find out what was behind the next corner, greet the next person. With beautiful visuals, the game also has decent performance. PS5 Pro does not support 60 FPS on quality mode, which is the recommended setting, but does on performance mode, where it plays very smoothly. I did most of my playtime on PS5, but I also spent many hours with the PC version. The game looks absolutely stunning on my specs, and it's running between 60 to 90 FPS on 1440p with everything turned to ultra high and FrameGen turned off. It's honestly amazing to see such a huge open world game with so many particle effects, complex NPC behaviors, and detailed tree and hair physics performing at this level of polish. I don't think I have ever seen anything like it. The wind moves individual trees and branches based on their weight. The water and floor look amazing. The NPC hair strands flow with the wind. On PlayStation, I experienced some crashes early on that the internet says are PlayStation update related and plague many other games, but tinkering with turning off internet fixed them. There are also some small grabs or slows when opening the map after unlocking new objectives, and I had a couple of very small bugs such as my character looking transparent while riding, or some enemies that had to be assassinated multiple times to stay dead. But overall, I have not found any progression bugs, and everything works remarkably well for a game of such size and ambition. It is also noteworthy that the game features cross-saves, so you can play on your PlayStation and synchronize the save with PC to pick it up on PC right after, which is awesome to have. On the audio front, the music was very hit and miss for me, with idle music and tunes feeling relaxing and comforting, and some bizarre and out-of-place battle music that accompanied the most important confrontations. The more modern, hip-hop, and somewhat Chinese tones again left me rather confused, as a game with such attention to detail and polish seems to get randomly derailed by strange creative choices that don't match the atmosphere they have worked so hard to produce. The voice acting in English is passable, but I did not like 𝐦𝐤𝐤's English actress for this, and I thoroughly recommend putting the game in immersion mode, as it will lock all voices to the Japanese cast and give you the incredible experience of listening to such an extensive list of famous and capable actors. The Japanese voice acting of Assassin's Creed Shadows is, without a doubt, the best voice acting the series has ever had. 𝐤𝐸 Shadows' price point, replayability, and game length. Open world games like this one don't really rank in replayability, but rather on the amount of content that they give you. 𝐤𝐸 Shadows delivers really good value for money. With a beautifully realized world packed full with so much content, most people will never complete all. It takes around 40 hours to complete the main story of the game, but you are looking at another 100 hours on top of that if you want to do every activity and objective. This isn't very surprising since I have 300 or so hours into Valhalla, but the quality of the content in those hours is, in my opinion, slightly superior in Shadows due to the more diverse activity offering in the base game. The side quests and side objectives are quite well done and built interestingly into the world and the real history of the places and people that were there, so you will most likely enjoy discovering them thanks to the overall polish of the product. There is really a lot of map to explore and a lot of content to do, so if you enjoy getting lost in this world, this game could keep you entertained for months or years depending on how much time you can put each week. It's also the kind of game that allows for bite-sized gameplay sessions, as you can play for 30 minutes or an hour and get things done, which isn't always possible with some other big titles. Additional activities such as the free built-in season passes that unlock special modern-day story, materials and equipment for completing game content, signaled to intended ongoing support for the title, which has already announced an upcoming expansion, but has cancelled its DLC season pass, so it may not get the DLC treatment that Odyssey and Valhalla enjoyed. The standard edition of 𝐤𝐸 Shadows is $69.99, which is the norm these days, and I personally don't really see a reason to purchase any extras. That said, if you feel that is too expensive as you just want to play through once and forget about the game, you can buy Ubisoft Plus subscription for $18 USD and cancel, giving you access to the game for a month, even at launch. All of this said, I feel like there should be a mention to the game's store that sells both cosmetics and some convenience items that have become rather cheeky. For example, while the game warns you that trophies are disabled in guided mode, you can purchase a map of all activities, many of them trophy-related, for 1,000 credits, which is about $10 US. You can also buy a bunch of fancy mount skins and cute animals to keep as pets for your hideout, as well as stylish clothes for your characters. Overall, I wasn't tempted to open or buy the store, or even reminded of it by the game, so I don't think it's intrusive or particularly bad since the content included with the actual game is more than sufficient to keep me entertained. I was annoyed about the activities map, but I'll find them all myself anyway. Final thoughts. My Assassin's Creed Shadows experience has both been fantastic and disappointing. The pacing and narrative issues of the dual characters and the immersion-breaking blips you may encounter can mostly be ignored thanks to the fun and engaging combat and the excellently designed stealth and exploration of the world. Hours went by without me noticing as I uncovered more of the map. I met more historic figures and got lost in the everlasting allure of medieval Japan. I had long stretches where I was fully immersed, only to be suddenly pulled out of this immersion by clumsy storytelling or events. But then I would go back to being immersed once again. This cycle repeated for much of the game. I had hoped that this would be my favorite Assassin's Creed, but when I sit back and reflect on my experience, I find that the narrative and story brings down the score average, but the core of the experience is somewhat similar to what has been offered in previous titles, and will give players a similar amount of enjoyment. This will mean different things to different people, as the density and abundance of sometimes thin content is not appealing to all. For me, that meant that despite its story stumbles, the gameplay kept bringing me back, and I am still playing long after the credits rolled. As I'm working on getting yet another Assassin's Creed Platinum, and plan to 100% every possible temple and shrine, so I can make a list of the ones I have yet to visit in real life. Rating time. Great. Story and setting. 6.5. Gameplay. 9. Design, visual and audio. 9. Game length and replayability. 9. Price point. 9. Expansive, detailed, and polished, Assassin's Creed Shadows is a fantastic exploration and stealth game with beautiful Japanese aesthetics, somewhat diminished by a thin story, clumsy narrative, and immersion-breaking design choices. Despite this, it's a thoroughly enjoyable entry into the series for fans seeking to explore medieval Japan. Thanks for watching! Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more AI-powered gaming strategies. See you in the next video.